Hey guys, 2000 Ford F-250 Superduty with the 6.8 liter Triton V10 motor. Got an oil leak coming from the oil filter adapter gasket. Common issue on these Triton motors as they start to age. So I'll be replacing that. And I have to drain the cooling system and then also the oil in order to change that gasket out. So I'll be doing an oil change and then also replacing the coolant plus the thermostat as well. First, go ahead and pop your hood. Once you get your hood open, since I will be draining the cooling system, let's go ahead and open up your coolant reservoir cap here. And you want to make sure the engine's cool before you do all this. And then I'm also going to pull off the engine oil fill cap here as well. So really quick here, I just want to show you where the oil leak's coming from. So you got your front differential here, your tie rod right here. So you want to look up in between here. See if I can get my camera to focus. So if you take a look here, that is going to be your oil filter adapter here. And what this does is brings coolant in and then also oil as well. And then it stretches back, goes to your oil filter there. This is a common leak right here. There's a little gasket that goes right on here. And over time, it starts to deteriorate. And so it needs to be replaced. So you got your power steering pump right here, so that is in the way, so we will need to unbolt that and just kind of move it out of the way there. But I just wanted to show you guys where the oil leak's coming from. You can see it kind of wet at the bottom there. Now I did go ahead and just degrease this a couple days ago because this was all covered in oil and dirt and debris. So I went ahead and just pressure washed it really quick here just to give us a better look at it. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and drain the cooling system here. So you got your drain petcock here. Get yourself a drip pan, and if you want to make it easier to where it's not making a mess, you can grab just a, I think this is a 3/8 hose, and if you can get that on your radiator here, and then you can go ahead and take this into your bucket here. It just makes a little bit of a less mess so it's not splashing all over the place. And then this is going to be a 3/4 or 19 millimeter, so go ahead and just loosen up this plug here. And this does get brittle over time. It is just plastic, so just be careful as you're unscrewing this. And we'll let this cooling system drain. So you can see that coolant starting to flow out of there. So we'll go ahead and let this drain. While this is draining, let's go ahead and drain the oil now. So while that coolant's draining, go ahead and get yourself a oil drain pan here. Locate your oil pan right here and your drain plug right behind your front differential there. Grab a 16 millimeter. Let's go ahead and loosen up this drain plug. Get that loose. Get your drain pan ready here. And go ahead and pull that plug. And we'll go ahead and let this oil drain. Once that kind of slows down draining, go ahead and locate your oil filter right here. Go ahead and untwist that. And you may need to use a filter wrench. Yeah, and that's too tight, so I'll have to grab a filter wrench. So get yourself a filter wrench or some pliers, oil filter pliers here, and try and bust that loose. Whoever did this oil change last really stuck this on here. And as you can see, this filter is way too tight. So use your pliers or wrench to get that loosened up here. And go ahead and loosen that up a little bit. Kind of let that drain so it doesn't get all over you. And then you can just kind of twist this off a little more. Just watch out, it will fall on you. So just be prepared once it's off, and then go ahead and let that drain. So next we need to go ahead and take off the serpentine belt here down on the power steering pump. That way we can go ahead and dismount the power steering pump from the block and then just kind of get it out of the way. So then locate your belt tensioner is going to be right here, and you want to grab a 1/2 inch breaker bar, socket wrench, whatever you want to use, and there's a slot right here we need to go into because we need to relieve the tension of the belt. So we get this down in there, kind of like that. And then what you're going to do is pull towards the driver's side. So pull towards the driver's side, go ahead and slip this belt off the alternator here. And then go ahead and release the pressure, get your breaker bar out of here. And then what you can do is, I'll show you down here. Go ahead and take this off the power steering pump here, and you can just go ahead and drape the belt on the alternator if you want to. So like I said, we're just trying to get this out off the power steering pump so we can get the pump out of the way here. And to give us a little better access so we can work from the top or the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and remove this intake tube here. So what you want to do is just grab these two hoses here, go ahead and slide those off. Just like that. Grab an 8mm. You're going to have this worm clamp here on your air filter housing side. Just loosen that up. With that same 8mm, you'll have another one up here connecting to your throttle body. Just go ahead and loosen that one up. Once you get those loose, you can pop this off and then pull that off your throttle body. So now let's remove our air filter housing here. So you got a couple rubber grommets on each side that those just kind of, this housing pops into, and then it kind of slides back towards the firewall there. So see if you can go ahead and pop that out of there. There we go. And then kind of slide that towards the firewall here, and you will have a sensor we need to unplug as well. So here's the connector here, and you can kind of press down right here on the tab and then try and pull this out, but it is mounted on the inner fender well here with a Christmas tree clip. So what you can do is just remove this off of here. So you can see there's what that clip looks like. Now you should be able to just unplug this. Makes it a little bit easier. So like I said, this tab right here, you're gonna press down on and try and separate this. There we go. So that came unplugged, your mass airflow sensor there. So now with that air filter housing out of the way, that gives us a little more room to get in here. You can see this is the oil filter adapter here. Down there's our oil pressure switch. This is a low radiator hose that connects to the oil filter adapter there. So I think what I'll do is go ahead and remove this hose here, try and get that out of the way. So I got a pair of vice grips here. Go ahead and release the hose clamp. Just slide that off enough to release our hose here. And this may be on here pretty good. There we go. So go ahead and kind of pull that off there like that. See, that gives us a little more room. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this air filter housing bracket really quick here. This is not necessary to do. I'm just trying to get you guys better camera angles, so I'm just going to remove this. But if you want to, you got 3 10mm bolts holding that in. So go ahead and take those off. Then you can just kind of pull this out of the way. So that gives me a little more room to show you guys here. So what we need to do next is disconnect the power steering pump here. So if you notice, you got 2 bolts. So one's going to be right there, The other one's going to be right here. Those are going to be 10 millimeter. You got 2 on top here, and I believe 1 on the bottom. So let's go ahead and take off these 2 top ones really quick. So just grab you a little socket wrench here with your 10 millimeter and try and get on that bolt there. Go ahead and bust that one free. Once you get it broken free, you can most likely undo it by hand here. Yeah, I'm not sure. Okay, so I'm getting caught on the that hose clamp there. So what I need to do is actually tighten this up a little bit. And then get my socket off of there. Like that. And then loosen it by hand to get it out the rest of the way. Because that hose clamp was getting in the way. And it looks like it's still going to be in the way of the bolt, but that's okay. You can see it is released from there. So we'll leave that one kind of like that. Let's go ahead and do this other one here on the other side. And I think I need a smaller extension. That one is on there tight. May need to move my camera to give me a little more leverage here. Yeah. There we go. That one was a little harder to break free. Okay, there's that bolt. And so for the last bolt holding that power steering pump on, you can see it right there. And I think it's going to be easier for me to loosen that from up above here, but I'll go ahead and leave my camera down here. I just wanted to show you where that one was located. So it's pretty much just below the very first one that we did. So go ahead and kind of hold your pump up. Get the rest of that bolt out of the way here. There's that one. So what I ended up doing, as you can see, was I kind of just stuck it off into the fan shroud there, just below the fan, and it's kind of just sitting there holding itself there. And that should work, give us enough room to get this done. And with that pump out of the way, you can kind of see there where it's all wet towards the bottom corner. That's where it's leaking at. So I think what I'm going to do next is go ahead and disconnect the oil pressure switch there, just to get those wires out of the way so I don't get snagged on any of that. Still debating whether I should just replace the oil pressure switch while we're in here, but let me just go ahead and unplug it. So you'll have a tab on the left side there. So if you just kind of squeeze with your thumb here, and then you can wiggle that off and disconnect your pressure switch there. And then you can kind of just bring this wire up out of the way, like I said, so it doesn't get snagged or caught on anything here. So I think what I'm going to do next is go ahead and clean up around the oil filter adapter here, just because there's so much oil and then dirt and debris kind of soaking this area. I did take a rag and kind of wiped it off, cleaned off that oil pressure switch, and then I took a couple of rags here, stuffed them inside this oil filter adapter here, and then also the lower radiator hose. so nothing gets down in there. Just going to take some brake clean here. Just kind of soak around this area. Like I said, just to kind of clean that up. And I'll go down below and do the same. All right, guys, so I think what I'm going to do is just go ahead and pull the oil pressure switch there. Just because this vehicle is 24 years old, has 200,000 miles, so sooner or later that's going to fail or start leaking oil. So while we're in here, might as well just replace it, and I'll get one on order. What you can do is take a 13/16 wrench, go ahead and get on the sensor there, and then just break it free. It's not really on there too tight. So get that loosened up here, and then you should be able to go ahead and unscrew that by hand the rest of the way. And you can see a little oil will drain out of that. So there's the pressure switch here. So now I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and close up our drain petcock here, because this is pretty much done draining, just to kind of get this pan out of the way. So go ahead and tighten this up. Just don't want to go too tight to where you break the plastic, so just get it kind of nice and snug there. And then you can get your hose off of here. And now what I think I'm going to also do is go ahead and pull the lower radiator hose on the radiator here. That way you can get all the coolant out if there's any more left in that hose there. So go ahead and get on your hose clamp here. I'm going to try some needle nose vice grips, see if maybe that's a little bit easier here, because this clamp is kind of facing the wrong way. Get those up in there, squeeze that, lock that on. So just be careful, because coolant probably will come pouring out of this, what's left of it. So we'll kind of just let that drain. So what I'm going to do next is go ahead and start removing a couple of these 10mm bolts here on the oil filter adapter. So you got one here on the left, kind of hard to see, and then the other one's going to be right there, and then we'll have two more towards the bottom there. So let's go ahead and remove those two. And it's kind of hard to get your arms up in here. So there's one right here. So break those free. Okay, so there's that one. That's what that looks like. And try to get this other one here. There we go. Okay, so there's that one. And the other two I think are going to be better to get from the bottom. If not, I'll move my camera down there and still be able to get to them from up here. So let me move my camera. Okay, so go ahead and remove the other two there. You can see there's the one I just removed, and then the other one just to the right of that. So go ahead and remove those two. I'm going to try and do it from up above there. Okay, so there's that one. And it looks like all four of these are going to be the same, so don't worry about getting them mixed up. Okay guys, so now the tricky part here. So Ford claims that the only way of replacing that oil filter adapter gasket is to remove the whole engine. That's the reason I'm doing this video. I'm hoping that this will work so I can show you guys and save some money. But the problem is this oil filter adapter, because you know how it stretches all the way back to the oil filter there. The problem is you have 4 bolts going through the oil filter adapter coming from the motor mount here. So what I'm gonna try and do is loosen up the 4 motor mount bolts that go through the oil filter adapter, and also loosen up the motor mount on the frame here. I'm not going to totally remove any of these bolts, just loosen the 4 and then the 2 holding the motor mount to the frame. And my theory is hopefully we can jack up on the engine just enough to kind of relieve the pressure off the oil filter adapter, and that gasket will slide right out of the oil filter adapter here, and then we can just slide our new one in, bolt it up, and be good. So what I'm going to do next is go ahead and just loosen up the 4 motor mount bolts going through the oil filter adapter. And if I zoom in here, you can kind of see them. So there's one right there, another one right there, and those are going to be 13 millimeters. And then you're going to have the same thing on the other opposite side there. So let's go ahead and loosen those now, and then we'll get to the one on the frame there. Okay, so this is from down below, guys. I just want to give you the best camera angle here, but I will be loosening those from up above. So like I said, I'm going to loosen up these 2 13 millimeters. I'm not going to completely remove them, just loosen them up maybe a quarter or so. So you can kind of break it free there. So I'm thinking maybe about, let me just go a little more than that. Because like I said, we want to have enough room to, for this to kind of go outward with the oil filter adapter. So I'm going to start out with maybe right there. And then I'll do the same to this bottom one here. Okay, so I'm thinking about right there like that. And then if you notice, the other 2, like I said, are on the opposite end right there. That's going to be your leaf spring, your sway bar link right here. So I'll go ahead and loosen those ones from up above as well. So that bottom one's pretty hard to get to from up above there, so I'm going to see if I can come down below here. See if this is any easier maybe. There we go. That's a little bit easier. I'm going to say about right there. Just going to go a little more on this one here, just to be safe. And it looks like my ratchet's hitting on the frame here, so I think I'll just try that for now. And it's not a big deal if we have to come back down here and loosen those up a little more. So next what we need to do is go ahead and loosen up this 15 millimeter nut here on this stud. This is right above your oil filter. There's the 2 bolts that we just loosened for the motor mount there. So let's just go ahead and loosen this, kind of the same thing we did over here. Don't fully remove it, just loosen it up. Try to get the best angle down here. It's not that easy. There we go. Okay, so just like that, just loosen that up about a quarter there, And this stud comes with the nut as well, so keep that in mind. Okay, so now what we need to do is loosen up the motor mount to the frame nuts here. So you can see you got a 21 millimeter right there, and then directly above that's going to be another 21 millimeter. So again, we're just going to loosen these, not fully remove them, and then we should be able to go ahead and start jacking the motor up a little bit and see if we can slide that gasket out. About right there, like that. I'd say you don't want to go too much. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and try that. Okay, so now we should be ready to go ahead and jack this up. I went ahead and just got my jack already. I did take a block of wood here, and you can see I went behind the drag link here, your track bar. And what I did was, try to zoom in here. So I got the piece of wood right up next to the oil pan there. It's actually on the engine block. There's a little, kind of a little slot there. So just make sure you don't jack it up on the actual engine pan there, right where the bolt goes. Like I said, there's a big chunk of metal that I'm getting onto just on the tip there. I'm going to try and jack that up a little bit here, and let's see if that's enough to get this gasket slid out of here. So just be careful as you guys are doing this. Make sure your wood is centered there, like I said, on the engine block, to where it's not going to damage your pan here. And then we'll just slowly jack this up here. Like I said, we're just trying to take the tension off of the oil filter adapter there. Okay. So now you can see coolant is actually leaking out of the oil filter adapter there. So I'll show you here, and actually let me get a pan to collect some of this. Get you a little pan there. Take a look here. You can kind of see, so now I can wiggle this. You can see right there like that. So let me go down below here and see the best way of sliding this gasket out of here. So trying to get you guys the best angle here. But if you notice right there, that's our gasket, that black plastic piece. So if you take a long screwdriver here, see if we can kind of pry this downward to release it. So you can see there's the gasket there, and then there's a little slot there on the right side. So if you can kind of press that towards the front of the truck here, you can see our gasket released now, and I should be able to go ahead and pull this out of here. So go ahead and slide that out. And there is our old gasket. So what happens over time is these kind of get flattened there, and then these will start leaking oil. And I've seen where this deteriorates all the way to where the oil mixes in with the coolant. So you want to change this out before that does happen. So let's take a look at our new oil filter adapter gasket here. So I went with the Felpro 70801. I got this off Amazon. I'll put a link in the description. But you can see it fits the 4.6, 5.4, and then also the 6.8 liter. Like I said earlier in the video, I did replace this on my 2003 Ford F-150 with the 4.6 liter. And it was doing kind of the same thing, leaking a bunch of oil from one of these ports just because this gasket was so wore out. And that truck has almost 300,000 miles on it now. So, but if you take a look at your new gasket here, so you see the red portion of the gasket, you can see that ridge sticking up. Whereas with the old one here, you can see none of that rubber gasket is sticking up at all. It's just totally flattened, and that's what happens over time. And that's why you'll start to get your oil leaking out of these. And like I said earlier, I've seen where it's wore through the oil portion and then the coolant portion right in here, and then you'll have a mixture of oil and coolant, which isn't good either. So, and then just you want to inspect this, make sure all the rubber portion of the gasket is intact on both sides and it wasn't left behind on the engine block or the oil filter adapter. Because if those little chunks of this rubber gasket are on there, then you can develop a leak with the new one on. But if you take a look as well, you can see, especially on the coolant side, this one's really wore out as well. It started a bow here, and then it's just kind of rusting all along here. So definitely a good thing we're replacing this. So grab a couple bolts along with your new gasket, and just remember that it's gonna slide in there like that. So this is that little tab that'll be kind of sticking up there on the right corner. So I'm gonna try to slide this in, and then at least get a couple bolts started here, because you want to make sure those bolts are going to go through the holes of this gasket. So trying to do this to where you guys can see. So slide your gasket in without dropping it, and you can see it just wants to slide downward there. So I'm going to see if I can go down below there and see if that's a little easier getting these bolts in. All right, so that's pretty hard to do from down below there. See if I can come back up here. Try to line. So it looks like I need to come up with the gasket here. See if I can hold up with this side here. And that's pretty hard to do too. So let's see if I can grab this with a pair of needle nose here, a long pair of needle nose, kind of pull up on the gasket just enough to get my one bolt started here. So I got that one started, and then just kind of go along with your other ones, and you want to make for sure that you are completely through the gasket too, the holes on there. So I think I need to come up with the gasket because it slid down again for that one. So just kind of work with it here. Yeah, it seems like it slid down more. So if you go down below, get the very bottom one in, then that'll prevent that gasket from sliding downward at an angle. So now I should be able to get this one here started. If I can find it, it's hard to see. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and do this other one here in the middle on the left side. Just want to get all those started. So I just want to show you, hopefully you guys can see this. I'll try to zoom in here. But if you notice, once you get all those bolts started, you just want to verify. You can see the red portion of the gasket, those two red dots. So you know that the gasket is lined up and all four of our bolts are through that gasket. So what we can do now is let's go ahead and get all four of these snug and tighten down. Okay, so those are all snug. Now we'll go ahead and tighten them up here. So once you get all four of those tight, we can go ahead and move on to the 15 millimeter nut and stud here above the oil filter housing. We'll go ahead and get this one tightened up, and then we can go ahead and lower that and then tighten up the rest here. So now we'll go ahead and slowly lower this and get our motor mount back down onto the frame there. So just go slow at doing this. Until all the pressure's off. And then you can get your board out of here. And my pan's kind of pinched under my jack here, so I may need to move that first. Get your board out of here. So go ahead and tighten up your two 21 millimeters there for the motor mount to the frame. And then while you're down here, you might as well go ahead and tighten up the 13 millimeters for the motor mount going through the oil filter adapter here. Just like that. And then of course get your other two 13 millimeters tightened up there. So I'm kind of at a standstill right now. There's probably a few more things I can do to start putting this back together, but I think I'm gonna hold off until I get a new oil pressure sensor. So I went ahead and jumped on Amazon and ordered a Motorcraft one, and it says it'll be here tomorrow. So I think I'll hold off until I get this oil pressure sensor. That way I got plenty of room to stick this back in, and then I can go ahead and continue on. Okay guys, so it's the next day. Amazon came through and they delivered the new oil pressure sensor. So this is the Ford Motorcraft SW-5192. I'll put a link in the description for this sensor. And if you take a look at the old one here compared to the new one, so I don't know if this is the original Motorcraft and they've updated it, but you can see it's obviously a little bit different. The plug-in's the same, but the size of the nut to screw it in is going to be a little bit different. So this is going to be a 27 millimeter, whereas the old one was a 13/16. So we can go ahead and start screwing this one in. And then if you notice on my old one here, you can see the rubber boot came out for the actual wiring harness. So make sure you pull that out if this did come out with the sensor, and then we'll stick that in the plug there. So go ahead and screw in your new sensor here from up above. Get that threaded in there. Use your 27 millimeter wrench or crescent wrench, whatever you want to use. Go ahead and get that snug. So to get that sensor a little tighter, I just was running out of room with my wrench here. I'm going to go down below and see if I can get a little tighter with a crescent wrench. Once you get that sensor all tightened, go ahead and grab your wiring harness. And I went ahead and just kind of cleaned this up with some electrical contact cleaner because this was kind of soaked in oil as well. But go ahead and take this moisture boot here. I'll stick that back around there, just since that did come off when we pulled the old sensor out of there. Just kind of push that down. So now we can go ahead and plug this into the sensor down here. Make sure you hear that click. You know we're on there and locked. So now let's see if we can get the power steering pump into place here. And then our 3 bolts. If you remember, this top one on the right was didn't want to come out because of this hose clamp on the hose here. So just try and get this pump where it needs to be. I'm going to go down below, see if I can get one of those bolts in. So try to get that lined up. I think it's easier from doing it from down below here. Try to get a couple threads on that one. And then I'll try getting this top one lined up too. And then if you remember this one all the way to the right here, this one just kind of stuck in there. It didn't come out because of this hose clamp. So if you can get that one shoved up there, and then started on a couple threads as well. That one is just really hard to get started because you want to get all 3 of these started first before you start tightening down, just to make sure your pump lines up with the block. Okay, so once you know all 3 of those are started, now we can go ahead and get those snugged up. So if I were you, I'd do this one last, just because it's hard to get your socket down into this one. So if you can get it tightened with your fingers, and then tighten it up that last bit with your socket. So now that we have our power steering pump tightened up, let's go ahead and get our lower radiator hose onto the oil filter adapter here. Get your rag out of here if you stuff that down in there. Go ahead and slide that on. Then go ahead and get your vice grips, channel locks, or whatever you're using to get this hose squeezed back together and back into place. And I always like to go ahead and put this back on exactly how it was. You can see the indentions in the hose there. That way you don't have possible leaks. And I need to squeeze a little more here. See if I can get a little more out of that. These spring clamps are a pain, but they do work good, especially with the expanding and everything of these hoses. Go. Like I said, try to get that lined up exactly how it was. So I think we're good right there. Next, we can go ahead and get our serpentine belt back on. And if you don't remember how it went, you can always come down here and you can see this shows how the belt should be routed. So again, go ahead and get your 1/2 inch breaker bar or whatever you want to use. And this is going to go up above the alternator, but then we got to go down onto the power steering pulley. So if you can get that kind of fed down to the power steering pump, the pulley, get that around there. So once you get around the pump, power steering pump there, you can kind of hold it up here, get this around the fan and water pump. And I think what I'm going to do is try to get around that first. And it looks like we slipped off the crankshaft here. Okay, so get it kind of like that, and then you can get your breaker bar in here. Into your belt tensioner. Get that in there, and then you're gonna pry downward, and then you can lift this over your alternator. So get that into place, and then just make sure you're centered on these smooth pulleys here. Belt tensioner down there. Once you're centered and you're in all the grooves, go ahead and release that. Now our serpentine belt's on. So before we go ahead and start putting our air filter housing, all that back into place and attaching the lower radiator hose, let's go ahead and get this thermostat switched out real quick. So to get that off, you're gonna have two 10mm bolts we need to remove. So go ahead and remove both of those. And if you take a look, looks like these are going to be both the same. So don't worry about getting them mixed up. Even though we did drain this, let's see if there's going to be any coolant that comes out of here or not. There we go. Let's get that out of the way. And then if you notice, there is this rubber O-ring, which I will be replacing, that sits on top of the thermostat. So go ahead and pull that up. Lift out your thermostat here. You can see that one is a little rusty there. So now let's take a look at our old and new thermostat. So the old one, you can see, is a Motorcraft one, so I'm not sure if this is the original, but you can see it says 185 right there on it, and the OE temp for this truck is 195 degrees Fahrenheit. So not sure why there's a 185 degree one, but the OE temp is a 195. So I went with this Gates 33469, got this off Amazon. Like I said, this is the 195 degree Fahrenheit, because where I live, it's pretty cold in the winters here, so this will be perfect. You can see, looks to be pretty much the same thing, a couple differences there. And then also got this off Amazon. This is going to be this O-ring here. This is the Felpro 35489. So might as well just go ahead and replace this while we're in here as well. So you can see that's pretty much the same size. So let's go ahead and get this new thermostat in. Okay guys, so after looking at the old thermostat here and just seeing all the rust that's on there, and then looking down into the thermostat housing, you can see all that rust build up as well. And then also on the Degas bottle here, you can see just some of the rust build up, especially inside there. So with this not being my vehicle, it's just a customer's, I want to make sure I take care of them and do it the correct way. So I'm not going to put a brand new thermostat in or coolant. I'm going to go ahead and do a total coolant flush. I'm going to run to Walmart, grab some of that Prestone total cooling system flush, and run that through the system with some distilled water just to make sure we get most of that rust out of there. So I'm going to go ahead and continue on getting everything put back together, and then I'll come back and do the thermostat later. But for right now, I'm going to leave the thermostat out of there. That way it'll just start flowing through once I add the flush concentrate stuff with the distilled water. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and get this O-ring put back in here so it doesn't leak. But like I said, I'm not putting the old thermostat back in. That way I don't have to wait for it to open up or anything like that, and I can just go ahead and start flushing it. So put that in there, get your 2 bolts here started. Get your other one on here. Just make sure you don't pinch these wires here. And then go ahead and tighten those down. I'm just going to get them nice and snug since I'll be removing this after I run some of that flush stuff in here. So then you can come back down below. Let's go ahead and get our lower radiator hose back onto the radiator. And you can actually see some of the rust coming out of that as well. So get your vice grips or channel locks here. Go ahead and squeeze on this clamp. And let's get this hose reattached. Probably will take this back off after the flush as well. Let's get that on there like that. And then go ahead and get your air filter housing bracket back in here if you did take that off. Like I said, it was easier to get down in there with that out of there. Get your 3 10mm bolts here on. And go ahead and tighten those up. Go ahead and get your air filter housing put back in here. Of course, your intake's gonna go back through there. And get it down to those rubber grommets down there. And then just kind of push down on those. Snaps into place. And then you can go ahead and plug in your mass airflow sensor. So then go ahead and plug that in. Make sure you hear that click. You know you're locked in. And then go ahead and put this Christmas tree clip back into there. And then go ahead and get your intake tube back on over your throttle body and your air filter housing here. That all slid on. Take your 8mm, go ahead and tighten up your worm clamps. Same with your throttle body one. And then you can go ahead and get these rubber hoses back on your intake here. Get those pushed on. So next we can go ahead and get our oil filter on, but first I wanted to show you what I'll be using for the oil and filter. So I went with the Ford Motorcraft FL-820S. Got this off of Amazon along with the oil. I'll put links in the description for it. I went with the Pennzoil Platinum High Mileage 5W20. And this is probably some of the best oil you can buy over the counter right now. I've read on the lab test and it actually compares pretty close with AMS oil. So really good stuff. So I'm going to put this in there, and it calls for 6 quarts, but I went ahead and just bought 2 5-quart jugs. It's cheaper to do it that way. And then you'll have a little bit left over for when you do an oil change the next time. So let's go ahead and get our oil filter on, and then also our oil plug in. So then go ahead and grab your new oil filter. I did just put a light coat of brand new oil on the gasket here. And then go ahead and screw that onto your oil filter housing here. And you just want to go hand tight on this. You don't want to use any wrench pliers or anything like that. Hand tightening is sufficient on these. If you saw how tight the old one was, somebody really cranked on that. So just get it hand tight. Go ahead and wipe off the filter nice and good. And then you can go ahead and replace your drain plug here. Just go ahead and wipe that off. Get that nice and clean. Go ahead and stick the plug in there. Grab your 16 millimeter, go ahead and get that snug. And if you want to torque this, you can. I believe it's 17 foot-pounds. But just get that nice and snug and you'll be good. So now we're ready to fill. So then grab yourself a funnel and let's go ahead and start filling. And then, like I said, this calls for 6 quarts. So I think what I'm going to do is just put in 5 quarts for now, and then we'll start it, and then we can add that last quart just to make sure we don't overfill it. Okay, so there's 5 quarts, and actually, you know what? I think I'll just add a half a quart at least, so that'll put us at 5.5, and then we can start it and all that, and make sure we're good. So let me go ahead and add half a quart out of this other 5 quart jug here. Okay, so that puts us about 5.5 quarts right there. So then you can go ahead and replace your oil fill cap here. So as you can see, I went ahead and went by Walmart really quick, picked up this Prestone Total Cooling System Cleaner. You can see right here, it does remove corrosion and rust. And then I also picked up a bunch of this distilled water. And I'm gonna go ahead and fill this up with the cleaner here, and then a bunch of this distilled water. And then we can go ahead and start it, and we'll turn it off, check our oil level, make sure we're good on our oil level. And then I'll go ahead and run this stuff. It says to run at least 10 minutes or more for heavy duty cleaning. I think 10 minutes will be sufficient enough, hopefully. And then I'll go ahead and drain all this out, add some more distilled water, do another flush with just water, and then hopefully get all that rust out. And then we can go ahead and put our new thermostat in and mix our coolant. And then as you guys start getting full, you can always squeeze your upper radiator hose to try and get out some of the air. All right, guys, so that seems to be good right there. Kind of hard to see, but the water level's right there. So I'm just gonna go ahead and replace this. And then I may have to add some after we start it up here. We'll see what happens. Okay, so now let's go ahead and start it up here. And then just pay attention to your oil pressure gauge there. Make sure that pressure comes up when we start it. So there we go. Got oil pressure. Check your coolant level here. You can see it did drop a little bit, so I'll top that off with some water. So then go ahead and crawl underneath here. Make sure you're not leaking anything from the oil pressure sensor. See, that looks good. And then check your oil filter adapter gasket. You see we're not leaking anything from that. That all looks good. So let's go ahead and shut it off first, and then we'll check our oil. And then we can restart it and let that stuff cycle through the cooling system. All right, so I just went ahead and topped this off really quick with some distilled water. That gave that oil time to get down back into the pan there. So now let's go ahead and check our oil level. So then go ahead and grab your dipstick here, go ahead and pull it out and give it a good wipe the first time. And if you guys notice, when I first started it, it took a minute for that oil pressure to build. That's just because we drained all the oil out. And then with that new sensor, it took a minute for it to get a reading on the oil. Go ahead and stick that back down in there, pull it out, Let's go ahead and check our level here. And if you notice, looks like we are a little bit low. So this, from your dot to here, top of your crosshairs is going to be a quart. So it looks like we're just a little bit low than a quart. So we're going to need to add a little bit more than half a quart. So probably almost a full quart here. And again, that's probably because taking off that oil pressure sensor and all that leaked out quite a bit of oil. So let's go ahead and add some oil. So like I said, I'm gonna probably add about a quart here, and then we'll remeasure and see where we're sitting at. So about right there is gonna be a full quart. We'll go ahead and let this drain down, give it a couple minutes. So it's been a couple minutes. Let's go ahead and check our level again here. Go ahead and stick it back down in there. And I'll just give it another wipe just so we get an accurate reading here. Stick it back down in there. Pull it out, and let's see where we're sitting at now. So if you notice, hopefully you guys can pick that up on the camera, but we are exactly right at the top of the crosshairs there. So we are perfect right there. So that pretty much took right at 6.5 quarts. Normally these take 6 quarts, but like I said, for us removing that oil filter adapter gasket and all that, we had a little oil leak out, and then from the pressure sensor, so just took a little more than normal. So 6.5 quarts, we were good there. So let's go ahead and replace our fill cap here. Okay guys, so what I'm going to do now is go ahead and we'll start this back up, and we'll let it run here. We'll turn the heat on high. Want to make sure it flows through that heater core and get all that cooling or that cleaning agent through the cooling system. So I may actually take it on a little drive here. I'll let it run for 10 minutes or so, take it on a quick spin, and then come back. Okay guys, so I went ahead and let that run for a little bit, and actually took it just on a quick drive kind of around the block here, and it didn't really heat up too much just because there's no thermostat running through there. And if you take a look here, not sure if you can see, but if I squeeze a radiator hose, you can see some of the water in there. It looks pretty nasty. So I'm hoping that this flush worked pretty good. And I'm gonna go ahead and drain it into this pan here. We'll see what it looks like, and then I'll come back. Okay, so I just wanna show you really quick here. So this is the original coolant that I drained out of it. And then if you take a look, this is the stuff after the coolant flush. So this is the cleaner, and then just the distilled water, and you can see just how nasty that is. So it looks like it worked pretty good, because you can see the water is almost like a rusty color, and then with a little mix of the green coolant there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and do another flush with just distilled water, and then make sure all that cleaner's out, and then we should be good. Put in our new thermostat. I'll show you guys that, and then also we'll go ahead and start mixing the new coolant. So I just got done doing another flush on this with just plain distilled water. Went ahead and filled it up, ran it a couple minutes, and then went ahead and opened the drain valves, let all that drain out, and then I just left the drain valve open, and then pulled that lowered radiator hose, and I just poured some more distilled water down this. And then I also took off the upper radiator hose and poured some down the upper radiator hose, and now it seems to be flowing clear out of the lower radiator hose, so we should be good. And then I also took off this coolant reservoir. If you want to do that, you got 2 8mm bolts there, another one right under here underneath your lug wrench, and then you got a hose here, and then there's a larger hose on the bottom that goes up into the reservoir. So you just need to remove those 2 hoses, then you can lift this out of here. I tried sticking my pressure washer down in here, tried to just rinse some of this out. You can see it got a little bit cleaner. You can see the walls here, but this part here just kind of stays stained and dirty because there's chambers in there. You can't really get your pressure washer or anything in there, but it does look better than it did. And then if you take a look here, so I went ahead and emptied that old coolant from the when we cleaned it the second time, and you can just see at the bottom of this how nasty some of that was that came out of here. So just wanted to show you that. So now we can go ahead and let's go ahead and take off our thermostat housing. We'll see how that looks, and we'll drop in the new thermostat and seal. So let's see how it looks in here. So you can see still a little bit of rust in there. It didn't completely remove all of that, you can see, but it's not coming off with my finger anymore, so it's almost like the block is just now stained, because you can see it's not really coming off too much with my finger. So we should still be good with that. So we got our old O-ring out of here. So let me go ahead and grab the new thermostat and O-ring. So grab your new thermostat, make sure this is nice and clean, and then go ahead and drop that in. And then pay attention when you remove your old one where the jiggler valve was there. So mine was right about 8 o'clock right there, so I'm gonna put it back in the same spot. Grab your new O-ring here. Get that down in there. And go ahead and replace your housing. Again, watch these wires here. Go ahead and drop your 2 bolts down in there. Get those snug, and then we'll torque them as well. Grab your torque wrench, and you can torque those 18 to 22 foot-pounds. So this is the coolant I'm going to be filling it with. It's just the basic Prestone yellow-green coolant. This is the concentrate. I prefer to do the concentrate because when you use just the 50-50 premix stuff, all you're doing is paying essentially for water, and this is only a couple bucks more for the concentrate. This is right around, I think, 12 bucks. I got it at Walmart. They seem to have the best deal on coolant. And then I also got 3 jugs of distilled water as well. And I'm going to mix this 50-50. And we got to take into consideration that there's still a little probably distilled water in the block, because when you drain it, you don't get all that completely out. So we need to take that in consideration. But what I'm going to do is go ahead and add a full gallon of coolant in the reservoir, full gallon of distilled water. And then after that, I can use these empty jug to mix 50-50 with this. So like I said, let's go ahead and add a full gallon of coolant here. Go ahead and pour that down into your reservoir. So there's that. So that's 4 quarts. Now when I went ahead and drained it all out, I emptied out the green drain pan that I had, and it came out to right around 15-16 quarts is what we drained out of it. So that's probably what we'll end up putting in here. So now we can go ahead and do a full gallon of distilled water here, and that'll put us at 8 quarts. So there's that. And then you can always just squeeze your upper radiator hose, try to get some of these air pockets out of there. So then what I like to do, so now that this jug is empty, we can take this one that's full, and we can mix half of this into that. That way we can get our full 50-50. So I'll just go ahead and pour this in here until we get about half of it in there. And there's no sight glass on these jugs, but if you take a look with your flashlight, you can see it kind of floating right there. So like I said, if you get these two pretty much even, you can see this one's over just a little bit, but that'll be perfectly fine. So now what you can do is take a thing of distilled water here and go ahead and top this one off. And we'll put half of this one in here and then half in the other, and that'll give us a perfect 50-50 mix. So I think we're good right there. You can see our lines right there, and then our other lines right there. So now we have 8 more quarts right there. So guys, I just realized that my camera wasn't recording, but these are the 2 jugs that I just mixed in that last clip. And I went ahead and added both of these, and right now we're sitting about right here, so we still need to add a little more. So right now that's putting us between these 2 here, The full jug of concentrate and that full jug of distilled water, we're sitting at 16 quarts right now, so we're going to need to add a little more as well. All right, guys, so I went ahead and mixed that last third jug that I had. So now we got 8 more quarts mixed 50-50. So let's go ahead and top this off. And I'm just going to go a little bit above the max line. It'll be totally fine. And just go ahead and squeeze your upper radiator hose here. Try to get some of that air out of there. Because once this thermostat opens up, our level will drop a little bit. So it didn't really seem to drop too much, just getting that air out. So I'm gonna call that good for right now. And then if you guys want to check your boil over protection or your freeze point protection, you can get one of these gauges here. Go ahead and stick it down in there. Go ahead and squeeze it and then slowly let off, and this will fill up with your newly mixed coolant. And then you go off of this chart right here. So it looks like our boil over protection, we're looking at right about maybe a little over 265 degrees Fahrenheit. You can flip this over. This will give your freeze point protection. So our freeze point looks like we're sitting right at about -37 degrees Fahrenheit. So that'll be perfectly fine for the climate we live in here. So now I'll go ahead and start this. And we'll let it run here. You can see our temperature is all the way at the bottom, so we'll let that rise to normal operating temperature, and I'll let that thermostat open up. Also go ahead and turn your heater on high. Get that flowing through the heater core. And then just check your level here. This might drop just a little bit. If it does, go ahead and add a little coolant. We'll let the air get out of the system here, and then we can replace the cap. So once you notice no more air bubbles or anything and this level's not dropping, you go ahead and replace your cap. And we'll let this warm up. And if it doesn't warm up, I'll go ahead and take it for a little bit of a drive just to get that thermostat to open up. All right, guys, so I went ahead and let this warm up a little bit. Took it on a quick drive just to make sure that thermostat did open up. You can see our temp gauge now. We're at a normal operating temperature, and we got plenty of hot air coming out of the vents here, so it's flowing through the heater core. So we should be good here. So let me go ahead and shut it off, and we'll check our coolant level. So then go ahead and check your coolant level here, and if you notice, it's sitting, you guys can see that, sitting right at the minimum cold fill mark here. And since the engine is hot, I'm gonna go ahead and let this cool. I'm not gonna open this up while it's hot. We'll let this cool down overnight, and most likely this level is going to drop a little more here just because coolant expands with heat. So in the morning, just go ahead and check this level again, and then just top it off to the cold full line, which is going to be right up here where this max is. So just go ahead and top off that with coolant in the morning, and you should be good. And then also just go ahead and check. Give you guys one more look here. You can see that all looks good. Our oil pressure sensor is not leaking. And then you can see that oil leak is pretty much cured. It was leaking right down there at that bottom bolt pretty much, and just above that, but you can see whatever that is there is just old residue, but seemed to fix that oil leak there. All right, so that's gonna wrap up the video. Again, this was a 2000 Ford F-250 Super Duty equipped with the 6.8 liter Triton V10 motor. Went ahead and replaced the oil filter adapter gasket. Common issue on these Triton motors, but as you guys saw in the video, you do not have to remove the whole engine to replace that little gasket. If you just follow the steps in the video, you'll be able to complete it just fine. And then also replace the oil pressure sensor, changed the oil, went ahead and drained the coolant, did a coolant flush, and then also replaced the thermostat and the thermostat O-ring. So Hopefully this video helps you out. If it does, hit that subscribe button. Check out my other videos. I got a bunch on this truck, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.